Fabulous. Happy Wednesday. Welcome everyone to our monthly series, Ask the Doctor. My name is Diane Solano. I'm an orthomolecular nutritionist and a longtime student of our amazing speaker this evening. First of all, I just want to let everybody know that we'll answer your questions towards the end. If there's any personal questions to you, feel free to type them in the chat. Dr. Rakowski, after his talk, does open it up for Q&A, which is amazing. And that's part of the reason why we host these Zooms is because unlike webinars, we're able to interact with our audience since we're an intimate group, which is really wonderful. For those of you that have never attended or watching a replay, please understand that tonight's conversation is for education purposes only. Here we go with the disclaimer, right? This is the world we live in. Definitely not intended for medical diagnosis or treatment of any medical condition. And it's just basically there to help you make better informed decisions, empower you. And at the end of the day, you're going to have the conversation with your doctor to get proper medical advice. So with that, I'm going to introduce our first speaker and our only speaker, Dr. Bob Brakowski, again, an international lecturer that speaks around the globe, not only to doctors and practitioners like myself and many of you on this call, because many of us are students of Dr. Rakowski, but he also speaks and treats for the critically ill. He has his own podcast. He treats world champions and simple person that's critically ill walking into his office. You'll hear the stories if you haven't heard so already, and specializes not only in natural medicine, but also in he's a diplomat in chiropractic and applied kinesiology, which means he understands structure and biochemistry. And that powerful combination is a person that really understands human health. And as of recent, finally an author, because we've been waiting for his book called Magnificent by Design, which you can purchase on Amazon in Canada and in the USA. We'll share the link later on in the chat thread for those of you that are curious. So with no further ado, Dr. Rakowski, thank you so much for spending your time tonight. I know you are out in the world serving others. So I'll turn it over to you to have today's discussion around men's health and everything else you want to share.
Oh, absolutely. And by the way, I'm going to get in a plug for next month. You said, what's our topic next month? Next month is going to be better than Ozempic. There's a lot of downsides to Ozempic, especially muscle loss of pleasure, things like that. And, some people are getting some really bad peptides, so be very careful with that. But we're going to talk about natural strategies to get your best beach body. So I gave a lecture at a major conference about a month ago, and, there's a couple hundred doctors in the audience. And I asked the question, are men as manly as they were just a few generations ago? And all the women not only said no, but it was like, hell no, where did all the good men go? It's just absolutely ridiculous what has happened to mankind. And we'll share with you. You can ask AI almost any question you want to put it in context. I asked, what are the trends in traditional masculinity indicators? And notice that, you might not see the arrow going up as effectively from the bottom, but it was 1925 to 2025 just have spiraled downward. And then we're going to talk about ways to bounce it back up. So notice that even AI's most hopeful won't even have men half as manly as they were or half the return in the next 25 years. But they're down as a breadwinner, protector, husband, father, craftsman, civic leader, physical laborer, and the general consensus is all those categories are down about an average of 45%. So what can we do to bring it back? We'll talk about that, but a few more very, very sobering statistics. Male testosterone is about in half since the 1980s. So they're saying a 1% per year decline independent of age. And what are we since 1980? 46 years. So a 46% decline, right at about the 50%. Huge drop between 1987 and 2024. Sperm count is bordering on the point of them being infertile. Testicular cancer's up. Men dominate the suicide statistics very, very sadly. They're just in such despair. We're poisoned before we're ever born. 62% of men overweight. 40% have never had their testosterone tested, and they suggest that more than half of them are low there. So here's our brief outline, and we'll talk through some of that. But this was a great book that I read, believe it or not, probably in the 80s or 90s. But the book was entitled The Trouble with Testosterone. And I often tell a funny story. I went into Barnes and Noble. That's how we bought books back then. And I walked up to the desk, and there was a woman that was maybe not happy with her spouse or significant other. And I said, I'm looking for a book. It's called The Trouble with Testosterone. And she just got all huffy and said, I'll tell you what the trouble with testosterone is. It's like, okay, I don't think I want to hear that story already. But testosterone, by the way, does not cause aggression, but it will cause exaggerated behavior. So if someone flips my switch, unfortunately, my switch flips a lot. And that's good news that I have testosterone. I still have to learn to buffer that part of my brain effectively. They've been talking about toxic masculinity, and we need strong men to lead from the heart. Society was built with strong men and strong women. So this is about men. I'm not going to discount our women. We're nowhere without them. They're beautiful. We love them, and they have their own health challenges. But we need men to step up and be what a man is supposed to be. And it's not someone that's a bully for everybody or criticizing everybody or just constantly ridiculously mean. No, that's toxic masculinity. I looked into this topic and they said, you know what? The sad reality is the only people that are thinking masculinity is toxic are guys that don't have much. That message is not getting through to the people that might actually have toxic masculinity. And so the American Psychological Association says, these new guidelines for men or roles in their society are really hurting their mental wellness, and I'll show later their physical wellness to a very high degree. I absolutely love Jordan Peterson. I'll use a few of his quotes, one at the end, but he says, a harmless man is not a good man. He says, a good man is a very dangerous man, but who can control it? So, who do you want to protect you if you need protection? Someone who's afraid, well, let's talk about police officers, firemen, someone who's afraid of their shadow, or someone who can actually step up and do the work. And you don't have to be 6'3" and 400 pounds like Eddie Hall, the first guy to lift half a metric ton. I mean, just such an impressive lift, never, ever done before. Look at Audie Murphy. He was 5'5", 112 pounds. He had 230 confirmed kills in World War II. So you don't have to be big, but you have to be tough. A pretty tough animal. Low testosterone is bad for both men and women. So I show some of the issues with women. I also show the picture of a very low testosterone man. The brain is affected, the body is affected, and not in a good way. The testosterone's effect on men more than women, I think, is 80-20. Women, I'd have to look at it. It's probably more like 90-10. Their body is definitely affected. And I'll show you some women with some testosterone issues in this picture as well. But bottom line, what does testosterone do? It's great for energy and mood. It's great for body fat regulation. It's great for muscle mass, bone density, even body hair, things like that. So you want to be ideal. If your levels are too high, we've got plenty of data of of guys that were injecting anabolics to bodybuilders. And we see an ever increasing number of these guys dying in their 20s, 30s, and 40s because you can get too much of a good thing. Now, interestingly enough, the society is trying to say that, in 25 to 50 years, we will no longer need men. They are actually taking female eggs, taking the genetic material and tweaking them in such a way that they think they'll be able to fertilize an egg with an egg. That's how they're going to tweet it. They're creating artificial wombs. We have women, so I don't know why we have to say the male role is incomplete. Certainly physical labor is going to be replaced by robots. The one question they ask is, are men socially necessary? And I'll tell you what, if you don't think they are, I don't think you have a good man in your life. Good men, good women, great balance. That makes for a beautiful family and a better world. This is the research of Tyrone Hayes, who was invited to study the chemical atrazine, which was one of the top herbicides used in the entire world. And what he found out is that frogs were mutating. If you exposed a male frog to atrazine, it would grow a uterus, ovaries, and eggs. And he tells the story. These are two brothers from the same litter mating. And one brother on the other. Guess what? I guess the female version of the male was actually able to give birth to tadpoles, but they were all male. So that means the species is probably going to be gone at some point in time, because if the atrazine's not there, males aren't going to grow eggs. But that just shows the horrible things that it can happen. There are women out there, these are very, very rare. Well, I guess these are men, but their testicles do not descend. They actually have they call it a blind vagina. It's a little pouch that really doesn't go anywhere, but from the outside, it looks like a female. And after their puberty years, they actually grow breasts. So here are two fairly famous athletes. These are both men biologically. They have testicles. They did ultrasound. Their testicles were in the abdomen. And on the outside, they look like females because they had that, I guess, blind vagina is what you would call it. Caster Semyana was a sprinter, and this was unheard of. She won the 400, the 800, and the 1500 at the national championship, all within 4 hours. The other was a boxer in the Olympians. She pummeled some female. The female just said, I'm done. I have never been hit that hard in my entire life. They both had 10 to 15 times the circulating testosterone of a typical female. Not 10 to 15% more, 10 to 15 times. So that will give you a distinct biologic advantage. I really like Daniel Amen. He was really talking about brains, but he said, if you wanted to make a country weak, sick, and stupid, just do what we've done to the food supply, to the environments, to the EMFs, to the social norms. It is literally destroying humanity. So I like to tell little stories and play little fun games when I have a lecture. So there's Dr. Evil, and I guess the other villain is number two. And they're trying to take over the world, but they're looking down and they said, my gosh, these men are powerful apex predators. And by the way, we are. We can take on any other animal, not straight up, but we have the technology and the brain power to make it happen. And they said, how are we going to deal with these apex predators? And Dr. Evil's great idea, what if we replaced men's testosterone with estrogen? And I was chuckling because there was a movie, two versions of it, The Longest Yard. The first one had Burt Reynolds. The second one had Adam Sandler. There's these prison inmates, and they want to play against the guards football. And the guards are just absolute beasts, and they're taking anabolic steroids. Well, they basically replaced the men's steroids with estrogen, and all of a sudden they're growing breasts and getting weepy and crying and getting cellulite. And if you replace testosterone with estrogen, that's what will happen. Now, what they've done is they've done it so slowly that a lot of people didn't know. But I asked, hey, if you had an evil plot to get rid of men, what would it be? Slowly poison them with forever estrogens. What's a forever estrogen? They don't break down in the environment. The estrogens that we poison the environment with, unless we find some real extreme way to get rid of it, it'll still be around in 100, 200, 300 years. Steal their dopamine. We're going to talk about why that's important. Dopamine has a lot of different function, but it's drive, it's focus, it's motivation, it's joy. It's even fine motor movement, depending on what part of the brain it is. And the way you steal dopamine is actually by hijacking it with things that are easy to get men addicted to. And that was the next plan, replace women and porn with bots. Believe it or not, that's happening. One stat, I didn't put it in the slide deck that we have here tonight, 71% of men under the age of 30 are not dating, and more than half of them don't care. They just don't have interest in women. And I'll tell you what, if a guy has testosterone, and I'm speaking for me and my friends, because we grew up when men had testosterone, we thought about very aggressive physical activity and girls. Those were the only two things we thought about. And I asked my great-great-grandfather when he was 123 when that stops. He says, my wonderful grandson, I don't know. I'll let you know if I ever get there. So yeah, we should have that for our entire life. Now you start looking at this and you look at, on the left of this slide, there's three companies mentioned: General Motors, Standard Oil, and DuPont. Standard Oil in the middle because they made leaded gasoline, and DuPont did other things with petrochemical products. But they found out over 100 years ago that lead was very, very bad for testosterone. In fact, bad in both genders, causing reproductive harm. And it also caused neurodegeneration. They spent, I don't know how many millions covering up that data. So it might have been till sometime in the 2000s. I didn't follow that up when they finally got rid of lead in gasoline, but we were poisoned for that entire time. Then you look at that atrazine research. That was the frog. That was Tyrone Hayes. That was a very famous cover up. And they noticed they call it the tobacco playbook. They would give women something called DES in order to try to, do different things with pregnancy. It was basically a prenatal estrogen, and it absolutely disrupted male sexual development. And then bisphenol A is BPA. That's in so many different products. And we are all, again, being very, very slowly poisoned, and it's very, very hard for the body to get it to clear. So a few stats on that: over 85,000 toxic chemicals in the environment, and over 1,000 of them are proven to disrupt the human endocrine system, especially the sex steroids, with over 1,800 proven mechanisms. So how do they work? They actually first act like estrogen in the body, both men and women. And women might say, well, I'm good with having estrogen. No, women are all estrogen toxic: uterine fibroids, ovarian cysts, endometriosis, fibrocystic breast cancer, autoimmunity, depression. These are all signs of excess estrogen that the body's not clearing. Block the androgen receptors. So you get these estrogens in the body and they compete for testosterone. And then there's an enzyme called aromatase that converts testosterone to estrogen. So men are getting hit on all fronts. When you start looking at the brain, arguably the most complex structure in the entire universe, testosterone has a huge impact on the male brain. In 2009, I taught an international brain series and really overall neurology series with a neurologist from Cornell. And we would joke about the difference between the male and female brain. Female corpus callosum, the connection between the right and left hemisphere, much more dominant. There's no such thing as multitasking, but there are task switching. And women are naturally much, much, much better at it. I'm married to a woman that can task switch like anybody. I swear she can do 10 things at one time. I can do one. And if I get distracted, it's painful. It's very, very hard for me to get back. So I have to lock myself in a room to not be distracted in order to really achieve. That's the difference between the male and female brain. You ladies are amazing. God bless you, right? We men, we have our limitations. But testosterone is going to have a huge impact on dopamine, and dopamine will have a huge impact on testosterone. So if you get real good dopamine, and real good stimulation, you'll have healthy, happy dopamine, healthy, happy life. Notice at the very top, it says, enjoy the little things. What's at the top of the fake hit for dopamine? Porn. And what is it all about? Instant gratification that you don't have to work for. So testosterone enhances dopamine. Dopamine enhances testosterone. They work together. So guess what? When men have less testosterone, they have less dopamine, they have less drive, and they're more likely to chase cheap thrills. And these cheap thrills are very addictive. So what happens is you get a cheap dopamine spike that you didn't earn. And then what happens is the body says, no, I'm gonna actually down-regulate that response. It starts reducing the dopamine receptors. It actually takes a higher concentration of dopamine to get the same pleasure. And that's basically addiction. And if you go back to the bad dopamine list, a lot of things are there, but what was at the top? Porn. And what happens is, okay, a guy maybe that, doesn't have much testosterone, he doesn't have much dopamine, he still might have a little interest in females. So all of a sudden a female shows up, she's pretty, and he gets a little dopamine hit. Well, he's happy, but the problem is if he keeps going back to that, now it takes more and more and more to get the same response. And in fact, the thrill doesn't last anywhere near as long. And all of a sudden, you just got to keep going back and for more extreme, and when does it end? And sadly, it ends with very, very bad outcomes for most. Well, brain scans from Daniel Amen. And if you look at a healthy, normal brain, look at the effects of brain on a chronically porn addicted individual. It's actually worse in some regions of the brain than even heroin. So moms, don't let your babies watch porn. I mean, it's, find out however you need to protect them. Bill Burr, he was talking about sex bots. He says, hey, look, they're already here. And, he actually feels bad for these guys that are addicted to this kind of stuff, because he says, let's face it, ladies, these bots, they don't have any mood swings. They're never going to argue with you. They laugh at all your jokes. There's never any drama, and whatever you want, whenever you want. So, if someone's used to artificial stimulation, that might be something that they next could be addicted to. This is a clinical psychologist out of Harvard. Literally, the studies show that 1 in 7 young people, and I believe this is both men and women actually, they are not in employment, they're not in education, and they are not in training. Think about that. That means their life is going absolutely nowhere. I couldn't think of anything so unfulfilling. What are you going to do if you don't have any of that going on? You're probably going to go for cheap dopamine. So sexless in America, modern stat, like I said, 71% of men 30 and under, 30 to 18, so you don't want to be too young with sex, but 30 to 18 are not in a relationship. More than half don't care at all. So now we're going to go through 10 daily testosterone thieves, and then we'll, right next to it, promote how we can actually pick that up. So number 1 is excess sugars and carbohydrates. Processed sugar in animal studies, 94% of rats prefer processed sugar to cocaine. So this is profoundly addictive. So guess what? We only go with high glycemic carbohydrates, and it is a lower amount. The extreme ketogenic diet, like an anti-seizure diet, actually uses about 75% of its calories from high quality fats. So a keto type diet is excellent for testosterone. Chronic stress. If some of you have heard me before, we're either making stress hormones or sex hormones, not both simultaneously. So stress is the enemy of sex steroids in both men and women. 3 natural strategies: deep breathing. It's amazing how you get a biologic reset, especially with a deep nasal breath that you hold for a period of time. Physical activity, especially more intense, excellent for testosterone. And then get connected to nature. And I'll say a few things about Ganoderma, but it's called the herb of spiritual potency. It calms the body, the mind, and the spirit. It's my favorite superfood. We can't make any health claims about it. I can give you data on Ganoderma, but literally I was going to share some amazing data on Ganoderma and men's health. And I literally got a call from compliance that said, Bob, we can't make any health claims. The FTC is cracking down on everybody. So don't make a health claim, because guess what? They're throwing people in jail, as ridiculous as that is, even if they're accurate. Poor sleep, a sleeping window. I was teaching a seminar years ago, and literally this woman, came up to me. I would take on case studies, and it was a 48-hour nutrition series. So we had, 4 weekends to get people better. And amazingly, every patient we took on got dramatically better. But the first seminar said, I haven't slept more than 3 hours a night in 20 years. We didn't have sleep trackers back then, but I thought, my gosh, that's biologically impossible. But she said, no, I promise you, I don't sleep any more than 3 hours a night. I said, well, all right, if that's what you get, that's what we'll give you. And so I gave her a sleep window. I said, figure out what time you want to wake up, and then essentially back off 3 hours. And you don't get to go to bed a minute before that, and you don't get to wake up a minute after that. You don't get any stimulants during the day, and you can't take any naps. Well, by the end of the week, she was sleeping 8 hours a night. I really doubt she was down to 3 hours a night. I think that would kill most people. There's maybe 1 in a million that could handle that. And then sleep hygiene. A quiet, cool, dark room is the best way to sleep. Endocrine disruptors. Plastic bottles, don't use them. Pesticide sprays. Metals are actually lined with heavy metals like sometimes aluminum, which is bad, or even bisphenol A. So the first solution, eat organic. Clean your air, don't use plastic. And then there's certain fruits, vegetables, plants that are good at clearing estrogens, especially cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, kale. And even Ganoderma can not only clear estrogen, but it can clear bisphenol A. Microplastics are getting to be a real big thing. There's a lot of information coming out about that. And I think I mentioned this and asked the doctor ago, and I actually looked up the price of this because I thought I heard it right. I thought one of the participants said, yeah, I think you can get it done for $500 to $1,000. No, $10,000 to $13,000. There's only one small study that doesn't show much evidence at all. So reality is, if you're clearing plastics from the blood, they're not in your tissue. Tissue is the issue. How do you get the plastic from the tissue to the blood? And then do you want to spend $13,000 and be hooked up on basically a dialysis unit for 4 hours for what might be little benefit? And guess what? There's risk to that too. There are what's known as metalloestrogens, lead, cadmium, mercury, nickel, tin. The herb Ganoderma actually increases metallothionein proteins 800% in 2 weeks, especially the Ganoderma lucidum spore. A low-fat or vegan diet will automatically be associated with less sex steroids. They get very little cholesterol, meaning then they're going to have to make all their cholesterol. And if they don't make it well, the mitochondria actually depend on cholesterol, and all of the sex steroids depend on cholesterol. So vegans are putting themselves at a disadvantage for energy production and sex steroid production. There's some pretty amazing vegans that seem to get by with it, but we're not vegans. We're omnivores. We should eat all food sources, mostly plants, though. Cholesterol is essential for every single cell in the body. Be very clear about that. These doctors that are poisoning cholesterol have been harming humankind ever since they've been doing it. So Gary Brecka, fairly famous. He used to work with Grant Cardone, 10X Health. Now he's got, I think, what he calls the ultimate human. But part of his claim to fame was he did life insurance work predicting when people would die. And he did tons of assessments on people that lived to be over 100, centenarians. And he says, you know what? I've never, ever, ever seen a centenarian with low cholesterol. And in fact, they all have high cholesterol. And when what he talks about this, he says, look, LDL is completely insignificant if you have low triglycerides and high HDL. And in fact, I did a consult not too long ago where the woman was very concerned about those levels. And I said, oh my gosh, you're probably going to live to be 100. Look at this data. Look at how absolutely amazing this is. Statins, not only do they poison cholesterol, but they also poison GLP-1. That means they oppose, it's like the body's anti-Ozempic, meaning, you are probably going to gain more fat and be more hungry. And then the statins also poison directly the mitochondria. Lack of strength training. You don't need big weights, big equipment. You just need to explode in your movement. You can do plyometrics. You can do sprints. And in fact, look at sprinters. They are some of the most beastly people ever. And I'll tell you, they are ferociously powerful. Now, I worked with the last guy that beat Usain Bolt. And it's almost unfathomable how powerful these people are. You put your hands on them and you feel like you're touching a racehorse. Their musculature is that amazing. My current book that I'm reading, not the one I wrote, but the one I'm reading, is called The Fourth Phase of Water. And we are learning more about water that's turning water studies on their heads. Water actually forms like a gel within muscle, and it literally generates infrared light, which drives the mitochondria, something called cytochrome C oxidase. The more muscle you have, the more hydrated they are, the more energy efficient they are. And think about that. When you were in great shape, had your best muscle, how was your energy? When you were in your worst shape, had the least muscle, how was your energy? We all need muscle. It's not optional for either men or women. Tufts University study, it was called Biomarkers 2000. What is the number one factor in how long you live in that study? Your muscle mass. Number 2, strength. Number 3, basal metabolic rate. Those are all related. Number 4, body fat, all related to muscle mass. So we need muscles. Excess visceral fat. This is bad fat. It's internal belly fat, and it starts to choke off your organs, especially the liver, the pancreas, the kidneys. Not in the abdomen, you won't get the heart, but people can get fatty heart, fatty muscle, and their organs begin to work less effectively. This fat is extremely pro-inflammatory, and it's much harder than regular fat to lose. So friends don't let friends get fat, and friends don't let friends especially get visceral fat. So what are the solutions? Better nutrition, ketogenic diet, healthy fats, low glycemic index, consistent exercise, and then relaxation. Seems to be the big three for almost everything. So what about overtraining? When you are training, you are breaking down your muscle. When you are relaxing, you are building your muscle. So people think, well, I want to get big, I want to get strong. Then you need to balance the two. And I would actually suggest if you err on the side of anything, err on the side of recovering more than breaking down more. You recover more, you come back better, stronger, faster, smarter. You break down more, you consistently get worse, or maybe you don't get better. You should get better if you're putting good effort into good exercise. Excess alcohol is number 9. My favorite strategy for alcohol is create more reasons not to drink than reasons to drink. As part of my education, I was required to go to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, and I was busy. I had a lot of things going on. I thought, what an absolute waste of my time. Why do I need to go to an AA meeting? It was one of the most paradigm shifting days of my entire life. I saw people that had everything and suddenly they lost it all. Fortune 500 CEOs, people that got out of jail because they killed people drunk driving. I don't know that you ever get over that. Women that were sexually assaulted repeatedly because they couldn't handle their alcohol cravings. So create a lot of reasons not to drink because alcohol certainly is addictive. If there are cultural circumstances where people drink, avoid those circumstances, and certainly don't ever get into the alcohol habit. Vitamin D deficiency is bad for testosterone, bad for every cell of the body. I always use D3K2. I just cut and pasted that from a company that I really like. There's a lot of good companies that have good D3K2. I like this blend a whole lot. Vitamin D is going to increase whole body calcium. K2 makes sure the calcium goes in the right place, not into the arteries or inflammatory tissue. So, Ganoderma, I can say something about Ganoderma without mentioning a product. This is a slide that I created about the many mechanisms by which Ganoderma protects testosterone. Interestingly enough, I like Ganoderma in coffee, but Starbucks about, I think 5 years ago, was being sued for lead in their coffee. Now they've found paint thinner, paint strippers with estrogenic chemicals in their coffee. So you want to be very, very diligent about what you're drinking. So by the way, if someone drinks 3 cups of coffee a day, 365 days a year, and does that from age 18 to 78, that's over 65,000 cups of coffee in a lifetime. And guess what? The stats are clear. 94% of coffees have either herbicides, insecticides, fungicides, molds, mycotoxins, heavy metals, microplastics, endocrine disruptors, and now we can even add paint thinner to it. Absolutely horrible. And even a minimal coffee drinker, 12,000 doses. So I'm a big promoter of the cleanest, mycotoxin-free, guaranteed, pure and clean, award-winning, best organic coffee in the entire world, which also has Ganoderma in it. And I can't make a claim about our coffee, about our Ganoderma, but I can tell you, I looked on AI and you can look at that yourself. Certain superfoods are really, really good for testosterone. And especially if they're coupled with coffee, the right kind of coffee, the alkaline coffee, they can be really, really good. There is a superfood called Tongat Ali, which is absolutely epic for testosterone production. By the way, in both men and women, it can also be good for estrogen in women. So there's a product we use that has it in it, and they call it the marriage counselor because couples may not be very interested in one another, but they get and put this in their system, their libido definitely rises. I like Bruce Lee a lot. I wish he lived more than 33 years, but long-term consistency definitely is better than short-term intensity. So guess what? If you're doing something 65,000 times in a lifetime, that would make you an average coffee drinker. Why not make it 65,000 proven steps in the right direction as opposed to a 94% probability that those 65,000 choices moved you in the wrong direction? So men have been on a serious decline for 100 years. It's been a big cover up. It's been so bad that some people are thinking that it must have been a plot. How could they ruin society that bad? Notice AI grew the graph that got men halfway coming back. I drew the arrow that said, I want us all the way back. And I'd rather have us all the way back now. And here's what I can tell you. I've got patience. We put them on protocols. Sometimes we raise their testosterone 3, 4, 500 points in a matter of months just with natural therapies. And most of it is what we showed and talked about here. So, resummary, this idea of toxic masculinity is hurting men, not helping women or helping men. Jordan Peterson says, be a man, have the ability to be a monster, but control it. Think about Audie Murphy, 5'5", 112. Hey, I want that guy protecting me. 230 confirmed kills. That's an amazing patriot. I hate war. I hate death. But listen, Audie Murphy, Hitler? I'm taking Audie Murphy and his 230 kills. I always finish or like to with Ogmandino, who said, and most of all, I will love myself, for when I do, I will zealously inspect all things that I allow to enter my mind, my heart, my soul, and my body. Next month is going to be better than Ozempic. That's going to be June 10th. Same time, same channel. You'll have to register for it. This is my book. If you want just chapter 1, you scan that and we will email you. And I say we because I've got a good team that's doing that. Chapter 1. I'll leave that for another 10 seconds. And then I'll actually go to the next page where there's a barcode where you could go straight to Amazon for the scan. And that's right there. By the way, I love the forward. Tom Morris, I think, is the greatest thinker of all time. He's written over 30 books. Read his books. Read mine first because he wrote the forward. But epic, epic, epic author. And as always, I just want everything that you do to make you happy, healthy, and successful. So, any questions from anyone about anything?
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Always so informative and great takeaways for people to apply. And what someone who's concerned with too much estrogen toxicity, what are some avenues that they can do in the meantime? And guys, if you have questions and you want to type them in chat or you want to unmute and ask, this is your
Well,
opportunity.
yeah, estrogen toxicity is everybody. I hate to tell you that. It's all just varying degrees. Estrogens and plastics, estrogens and pesticides, estrogens injected in the animals. Human toxin inventory, they found it in every single fat sample they looked at. The liver has 11 different enzymes that can clear estrogen. Some are very healthy, some are very risky. The cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, those drive what's called cytochrome P450-1A2. And then in phase 2 of liver detoxification, there's something called glucuronidation, sulfation, methylation. Those can be limited in people as well. I'm sorry that I'm talking technical, but I want to give you the gist of this. So there are medical foods, functional foods that have been formulated by high-level nutrition companies that are proven to enhance healthy estrogen detox by as much as 900% more than placebo. Ganoderma lucidum is a great way to clear out the metalloestrogens. Prevention trumps cure. Don't get fat. Don't get overstressed. Eat all organic and then take the right nutrients and you can clear that out of your system.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. So we have the formula, guys. You got to really start walking away from processed foods. That is, no matter, for all the years I've done this in all the different modalities. I don't care if people are testing gut, if they're doing DNA testing, if they're doing, bioterrain. The bottom line is you can't be eating chemicals. End of
And
story.
so,
Irrelevant of your goal.
Diana, I've got a chapter in my book, Real Foods, Real Results. And so I did a little updated research on that. 70% of processed foods have different nano additives that are profoundly toxic that the body can't protect against. They're so small, they diffuse right into the cell. And things like titanium dioxide, the body doesn't know what it's doing with it. So there's every time someone, not time someone processed foods, they are getting horrific toxins that the body's going to have one hard time clearing.
Exactly. So I just kind of want to, sometimes Dr. Bob talks a lot of great, amazing science, and I know I'm a science geek, but there's some people here that's it's overwhelming information. So let's
Don't
go
eat
fast.
processed, all organic, lots of cruciferous vegetables, keto, move your body, honor your body, mind, and spirit, find your purpose, live it, love it, share it.
And be consistent with that every day. And it's really about stepping into a new identity, but that's how it happens. Those small little commitments every day starts to build out the new identity of how you're showing up in the world today so that you can have the quality of life that you want long term. That's for you, your family, and your loved ones. So if you have any questions, please type them in chat. Even personal ones are good enough. I see, yeah, nothing's coming yet. It's a quiet night tonight, guys. And hey, if there's no questions, there's no questions. But Claudio raised his hand, so Claudio, would love to hear from you.
I've always got to say hello.
Happy, 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 beautiful evening.
Again, it's so much invaluable information, and most of it is actually quite new as well. Thank you. You both met Ali at the event that we had here in Toronto. She's been having great results with what she does with men dealing with ED. So I just wanted to relay that information. And I can pass on that information as well if anybody's looking for that.
Excellent. Yeah, that's something out there that it's interesting when Viagra came out, it was originally designed to be a blood pressure drug because nitric oxide dilates blood vessels. And then they found out, holy cow, it's good for certain other blood vessels too. And they scrapped it as a blood pressure drug and they created a sex drug right away. And they said as soon as they had a drug for that, all of a sudden, like 30 million men, they were not saying anything about those challenges and boom, give us some help, right? So, yeah, the number one step is get healthy. If there's a stressor that you need to resolve, counsel that. I'm not sure what avenue Allie takes, but if it's effective and natural, I'm for it.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. There's a question in chat from Francesca and Claudio, and I'm not sure if this is super clear, but basically what tests should be tested when doing blood work. So I'm not sure what she means, but maybe what kind of tests
Thorough. So
is fine.
I've got a panel that I created with a company called Avexia LabCorp, 68 different parameters that does a great job at looking at the major markers that keep people healthy. Understand that, well, now that people are so poisoned, I would often tell people that it's not the testes that are the problem with testosterone. It's not the ovaries that are the problem with the estrogen. There's a dozen other things above that can trigger that. So if someone wants to have their testosterone tested, I don't actually do that in my standard panel or even estrogen progestin. But if people want it, we can get it. If they're having symptoms, I'm going to look at the major factors that are going to cause that. We're going to unwind that. And, I can't think of a case where when we did unwind the factors and we had a compliant patient, we resolved those issues. Getting healthy is the solution. So low T is more a symptom than a primary problem. Have you been poisoned with these estrogens? Are you stressed? Do you have too much body fat? Do you have too much visceral fat? Is your diet inappropriate? Are you not exercising? Are you not sleeping? Are you in a bad relationship? Have you been exposed to some crazy toxin? These are the things that cause low T. Without addressing those, injecting guys with testosterone, bad idea. And Charles Poliquin, one of my favorite mentors, a great strength and conditioning coach. He sadly passed, a number of years ago, but he was very, straightforward on this. He says it is criminal to give a man testosterone when he's fat because his body fat will convert that testosterone to estrogen. And he's already got too much estrogen. So it literally makes him worse. That testosterone boost might help him feel a little better, but they're making him worse.
I love it, Dr. Bob, and that's exactly it. It's all about root cause. What is the root cause that's driving these kinds of imbalances? And that's where, your panel is really powerful. 63 markers where you start to look at the interactions between different ones so you can eliminate what potentially could be there or not. And for
Diana,
those of
I
yeah,
love what you said. I want to spin on that for a moment. So, when people look at cholesterol, doctors are so untrained. They go, "Oh, high cholesterol. Let's give you a statin." Unfortunately, I'm doing a consult with a patient in Europe who, in all probability, has statin-induced dementia. And the doctors are just saying, "Hey, you're going to die if you don't take this statin." And half the family's on board with it, even though they're all watching her decline so horrifically. There was a NASA flight surgeon that wrote a book, decades ago, Lipitor, Thief of Memory. The brain needs cholesterol. The brain needs mitochondrial function. Statins poison both of those. And for some people, it can cause rapid and progressive dementia. Horrible.
And that's exactly it. These are the behind the scenes conversations that these kinds of calls that we do once a month is to bring the awareness to you and your family so you have educated information and decisions that you make pro your health. So Dr. Bob's panel, for those of you that are curious, Dr. Bob does do virtual appointments. Of course, you know what? I love to fly in and get my whole assessment done by Dr. Bob, which is so much fun. But if you can, he does do virtual appointments. People often ask. So we can connect you to the Natural Medicine Center. You can connect with his staff, and they can definitely do patient doctor consults officially, just so you know, for those that are curious. Also, if you are watching this and you thinking someone in your world needs to hear it, you'll get the 48-hour replay. You can always forward it off to them. They can always join these calls. It's definitely for our community. And of course, we have his book, The Magnificent Seven, that goes deep into all these topics every week. How you can really start taking control of your health. I'm going through, you can see my bookmarks here. I actually got a highlighter going on, and it's just been such a wonderful treat to read it in writing, Dr. Bob, after all these years, all this amazing knowledge coming out of your mouth. Well, now we get to put it on pause, slow it down, make notes, and keep learning. And at the end of the day, you're going to be your own health care provider. No one's going to take better health and care of you than yourself. Dr. Bob is a practitioner to help you understand where you are on your way and how you can get better. But every day, the choices you make will compound. They just will. So hopefully, we'll inspire everybody to make a little bit of a better choice, myself included. We all love and need these reminders. Don't feel guilty no matter where you are at today. It can change now. Get to bed now. Don't eat anything tonight now. Like it starts now. And guess what? Your body and your cells are always multiplying. They're creating new ones. You can have a whole new biochemical code if you really put yourself in priority. And that's really what it's about. It's self-love and priority for you. I think that's it for tonight. It's been a quiet night, but nonetheless, a powerful one as usual, Dr. Bob. Maybe if you want to remind us what is next month's topic. So next month, as you may or
Better,
may not know,
better than Ozempic, getting your
better than-
beach body with all natural remedies.
so that will be next month's call. That's the second Wednesday in June, which I'm not sure
June
what the
10th.
calendar is.
June
June, there
10th.
we go. June
Mhm.
10th. Next, Ask the Doctor call. So with that being said, happy night, everybody. Thank you everyone for joining. Dr. Bob, I'll leave it up to you for a powerful close.
Well, you know what? My book, which was a 40-year project, literally, one of my students from 25 years ago, he says, "Man, I've been waiting for that book for 25 years," because I've been writing it for 40 years, and I do have a lot of not just ancient principles which are still valid, but cutting edge science proving that if you take good care of yourself, you will have a life worth living. The only way to have health is to earn health. That's one of the first principles in the book. But the crowd I'm looking at looks like you're all earning it. So, number one, keep up the great work. And number two, let's pay it forward. Our wonderful world needs us. So, with that said, good night, all, and God bless.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Thanks, everyone. Have an amazing night. We'll see you on the next calls. We'll see you in person and we'll see you online. Get Dr. Bob's book if you haven't already, and better yet, get him to sign it when he's in your town or city.
I'll
Thank you,
do it.
Dr. Bob. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.